G'day, and welcome to another edition of CtrlCast. This is a platform where we discuss transport topics and how transport operators move from traditional diesel and dust to technology, data, AI, and beyond. And today we have a very relevant topic, very exciting, very futuristic. It's about electronic vehicles, EVs. And we're very excited to have a partner here today, Michael Maas, the founder of Zimi. Thanks for being here, Michael.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So let's talk. Zimi, what do you do?
So yeah, we are a solutions provider in the fleet industry, really helping fleets that are operating traditional diesel vehicles to shift to electric, really to make EVs possible. So we work with large fleets really to understand what their fleet does and then helping them to deploy the vehicles, the charging infrastructure and the energy they need to really make EVs a reality.
Zimi itself, let's just take a step back. Where did the name come from?
Zimi is actually a combination between my name and my wife's name. My wife's name is Lily and my name is Michael. So it used to be called Limi. And then we went out to go and trademark the name. Limi was unfortunately taken. So we had to workshop an alternative for the L and the Z from the Mazda Zoom Zoom ad made it sound quite energetic. So it became Zimi.
It's quite fitting for the transport industry, right? How many of transporters have gotten their names in the same method. So
yes.
I'm pretty sure they enjoy that. And what is your role at Zimi?
So I'm the CEO. So I work, with the team, building the team, and then also working primarily in commercialization. So working a lot with the fleet operators in kind of analyzing their fleets, understanding what they're currently doing, and then helping them to deploy this on site.
Wonderful. And just a bit of history about the business. How long has it been going? When did it start? Who did you start with?
So we started the business in 2021, so it's about 5 years old now. We really started out as my co-founder and myself, Stefan Nau. We really started as a public charging network initially. So we were quite ambitious on the uptake of EVs in South Africa. So we thought, let's go and deploy a lot of public charging stations and see if that will work well. And from the initial conversations we had with a lot of customers trying to drive utilization at these stations, we realized that fleets had the biggest pressing problem, which was pressure to decarbonize, but they still need to make the rands and cents work. So we just thought that let's pivot the business, let's really focus on fleets and see if we can help them really reduce costs and reach ESG goals.
Let's make it practical. If you're a transport operator, there's a lot of disinformation. I think there's a lot of assumptions around EVs and how transporters can really capitalize on it. How does one start? If I'm an operator, I'm a fleet owner, I'm considering this, what are the first things I'm thinking of and how do I get going?
It's a great question. I think some of the misconceptions that people have is that there aren't electric vehicles available in South Africa. I think that's a good starting point. So a lot of fleet operators don't know that you can actually get electric panel vans, you can get 4-ton trucks, 8-ton trucks. We're doing large tractor trailer combinations with gross combination masses of up to 80 tons. So these vehicles are in the market. The biggest thing that you have to think about is which vehicle will be best suited for my use case. So if I'm doing milk runs or if I'm doing last mile, you really have to look at what am I currently using? Am I using a Sprinter? Am I using a 4-tonner or whatever it might be? And what distance is that vehicle covering? That's the biggest first consideration. So I think starting off with just understanding which vehicles are available in the market and which vehicles would be a good fit, because one of the most important things that we promise customers is that we'll always make sure that you're saving money. That's the most important thing. If we can find you a good vehicle that will replace your existing diesel vehicle, perform the same way, you can reach your SLAs, etc., but we will make sure that saves you money. But I think start with which vehicles are available in the market. That's a really good starting point.
And how does Zimi get involved with that process? Do you assist, or post that decision, do you then enter the fray?
So we also supply the vehicles. So we supply the electric vehicles, we do the charging stations and the energy. So we also can help you, kind of guide you on that decision-making process. So we also run vehicle demos and pilots with customers. So typically what happens is, let's say you have a fleet of 100 or 500 vehicles, whatever it might be. You're not going to transition your whole fleet day one. I don't think that's a responsible decision. I think you first have to understand the risk and understand how it impacts your operation. And how we help customers de-risk that is by giving them the vehicles to trial for free for a period, really making sure they understand exactly what's the impacts on their power supply, how does it affect drivers, and then from then you can start scaling it upwards.
Oh, wonderful. So vehicle first, you assist with that process, and then a period of testing, and typically, what is the outcome of that? What's the goal you want to achieve in terms of is it cost saving as one of the indicators? How does the client know what to do after that pilot period?
The two biggest impacts you typically have is A, cost saving. So you're looking at your total cost of ownership, so your per kilometer saving. That's really important. That's one of the biggest decision-making factors, right? The second is carbon saving. So how much carbon did I actually save using this vehicle? And what will the impact be if I roll this out across fleet? I think those are the two critical components for a fleet manager to understand. And we help them model that out. So our software helps track the energy cost. We help track the fuel savings, everything that they need to make an informed decision. And then to help scale it up.
Let's unpack the software component. What does the platform do? Does it, I guess there's integrations, etc. Let's just make that practical.
So if you think of it on a practical level, you have a couple of assets, right? So you first of all have your vehicle, which has its telematics unit in it. You're probably using one of the telematics suppliers in South Africa. You have your charging station, which is the physical charger. That's what you need to plug into the vehicle to charge it. And then you also typically have either a solar inverter or a solar setup at your premises. If not, you still have utility power, you still have your municipal power, and you'll have smart meters tracking that. So you have these three basically, and then you have static information that we have. So you have these 4 data sets, and you basically want to pull all of that in to start seeing how does it perform. So on a basic level, think of the price of electricity. We map the price of electricity at your location. So if you're working in city of Cape Town or in Ekurhuleni municipality, we know the tariffs for that location. So we can show you exactly what your cost has been charging the vehicle. And then if you overlay something like the telematics information, where you now have things like trips and distances, you can start seeing your cost per kilometer to actually deliver your goods or to deliver your service. So the platform really practically helps them to visualize and understand this data, this cost data really, really well. And then secondly to that, if you think of a fleet controller, you want some operational dashboard where you can view how my chargers are performing. Are my chargers online? What's the uptime? How are my vehicles performing consumption-wise? Like how much range do they have left while they're on the road? And the platform makes that really visual for them. So helping them very quickly see what's happening with their charging infrastructure, what's the consumption ratings of their vehicles, so that they can day-to-day make good operational decisions.
And you mentioned in the start, this is not a futuristic concept. It's happening. It's now. We see this in fleets adoption around the country. What is your feedback on uptake? And are you pleased with the progress thus far?
Yeah, it's been amazing actually. I think with a lot of fleet managers typically ask the question, because again, they're trying to manage risk. So they say, we don't see a lot of EVs on the roads. Yes, some companies have rolled it out, but why hasn't the uptake been as fast as we've been hoping? And I think it's really the risk appetite of the transporter. So again, the solutions are there. Solutions are here to prove value, and they are showing a significant amount of value for customers. But you need somebody to have an innovative mindset, to have space and capacity to run these types of pilot projects. So you need to have somebody who's going to be able to say, look, this is the person that's going to run the EV projects in my company, and they must go and understand this and run the pilot and see how it performs. Because I think there is significant value, and I think, again, because the cost savings are so significant running EVs, it becomes a bit of a no-brainer once you see the results.
That no-brainer, though, I don't think many transport operators necessarily know, maybe for the lack of knowledge, but the conception or the misconception of this initial enormous upfront cost to get some sort of future saving over a very long period, like how do you equate that? What do you tell transporters that maybe are wary because that's how they perceive it?
That's such a good point, because I think people always look at the upfront capex of the vehicle, which is typically more expensive than the diesel vehicle. But your savings is driven by the savings in fuel. So if we're looking at the types of sprinters, panel vans, they're driving up to 85-90% fuel savings. That's 90% of your fuel bill cut out, right? Yes, a portion of that will go towards your capex or towards your financing of your vehicles. But we're seeing the fleets achieving anything from 10 to 40, 45% total cost of ownership savings. That means you could realistically, if you're a fleet operator, be cutting out a third of your costs just by shifting to EVs. That's significant, right? If you think of your OPEX basis, it makes a big difference in your cash flow. And we also help them model this out. So we have a cash flow model, which helps them see what is the impact of buying, leasing, financing all of these assets. What happens on my cash flow on the fuel side? And you're seeing payback periods of 3 years or less in some cases, depending on if the guys are leasing. If you're leasing, running a lease model, you can see positive cash flow in the first year already.
That's amazing.
So again, it's a case of making sure that the numbers are modeled correctly and just proving that again. So again, we all love playing in Excel and we all love everything can sometimes look good on an Excel spreadsheet. But then you put the vehicle on the road, you pilot it, you demo it, you see the real value, so you take it from there.
The other aspect that I think many transport wonder about is the infrastructure. And hence almost, null avoid even considering that because, the conceptions are, well, it's not ready, it's not there. What is your feedback on that?
I mean, that's why we exist, right? So Zimi is there to make EVs possible, and one of our core products is the infrastructure. So we actually help fleet managers understand what type of energy they have available, how much electricity do they have at their sites, if it's depots or warehouses or offices, wherever they're, but typically it's going to be a warehouse or a depot where they're running the fleets. And we understand exactly how much energy is going to be available there, so we can guide them on the types of charging infrastructure they need at their sites to operate successfully. And in the cases where they don't have enough power, we also deploy solar, so that gives them the additional capacity to run EVs as well. That's in the private space. So that's not when you're a fleet operator, you have your own private warehousing facilities, etc. If you're thinking as a consumer on the public side, it's a different game. So again, if you're a consumer, there's about 250 public charging stations. Not all of them are equipped for fleet. So again, if you think of the height restrictions that you have at some of these stations, but we map out and guide the fleet owners in the case where they have to do emergency charging. So let's say the guy's gone out of range or he's doing a delivery on a different route, we can guide them to those public stations. And then there's about anything from about 50 to 100 stations in South Africa. And if there are places where the fleet operators really have high volume routes, we can also develop those sites ourselves. So again, we're very much in the space of helping to find solutions for these customers and not being as reliant on the public networks as they should be. There are some really interesting public network providers. I mean, we're working with Charge now as well, where we're electrifying the N3. So they're putting up high volume logistics charging stations on the N3 route. And they're kicking it off now at the end of May. So looking forward to pushing some trucks on that route. So keep your eyes on it. I mean, the industry is developing quickly, and the public players are really coming to the table as well for the fleet and logistics industry.
And I guess where South Africa is now is not unique in terms of this transition. Might perceive it to be still in a very early stage. How does this compare to counterparts internationally that have gone through this and is still going through this process?
Yeah, so I think like the two strongest growing areas is going to be China and Europe, right? So Europe, I mean, countries like Norway, I think 98% of sales, of vehicle sales are EVs. If you looking at places like the UK, can't remember the exact number, but something in the high 20s or high 30s. Europe has put very strong regulations in place, so they have banned the sale of petrol and diesel vehicles from 2035. So in that case, people have no other choice than to start exploring EVs. And China, of course, because China has a very strong EV manufacturing sector. They've got lots of subsidies and support in government there. So in those places, I mean, you're seeing significant adoption of electric vehicles. So it's just a case of South Africa, getting to that place of growth as well.
And Zimi, for yourself, in terms of growth, predominantly in countries South Africa, or have you considered SADC region or other regions outside of South Africa?
So yeah, we're primarily focused on South Africa. I think South Africa has, I think we've got about 12 million vehicles on the road. What's that, about 3.1 million in the commercial space, light and heavy. So I think South Africa is quite a significant transition. We still have to transition those 3 million vehicles over. So I think for us, there's a lot of room for growth in South Africa. We do some work in like Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique, but again, from South African companies that are operating there. So not necessarily deploying in those countries. We did explore looking at places like the UK and Europe, but again, because we do physical infrastructure, because we do the vehicles, it's much more difficult to expand your business overseas quite quickly. I think you have to have quite a large balance sheet to do that. So no, we're very much South Africa first.
Lovely. And this is where the opportunity is.
Exactly, yeah.
In terms of the platform, the technology side, so there's obviously a strong infrastructure, hardware, etc. But on the tech side, I mean, integrations, linking into clients' existing environments. Have you seen that as a nice, smooth transition in a client's environment on how they can, utilize your platform even further?
Yeah, so I think of it in two ways. So the first is if you're operating EVs, I mean, they pull up our dashboard and they have it as a view in the control room. So it's just, we have this as something that we operate with. And when they want to do things like reporting, they can tie into, our existing data sets to get the data out of that. I think like as well, transporters are very reliant on manual systems, things like Excel, spreadsheets. That's still very pervasive. That's not something I think, and I mean, that's the challenge that you at Control Fleet are taking on. And I think there's so much room for improvement. So if I think of the way that we're integrating with you to also, have that route planning capacity where you can see the charging stations as waypoints and you can plan things actively on your management system, that's just the way to go. So I'm also always encouraging customers to also start trialing and pushing for digitization, because I think there's still a lot of room for growth in that space in logistics in South Africa.
Yeah, the integration we have with you is one of the ones that we are very bullish about. I think the transition on going to EV comes along with that ease of control, and the client the transporter that wants to continually feel that they've got that digital control. I think we're still in very early stages of something that's really going to show a lot of value to go.
Definitely, and I think if you think of like the value of being able to like manage your SLA, like you need to deliver goods to a customer, and having visibility on what the timings are, the charge timings, the wait times, all of that, having that planned in with a system like Control Fleet is just extremely powerful. So yeah, definitely excited to see how it grows.
Listening to you, I mean, it sounds really like a no-brainer for transporters to take the first step. The questions that they have to ask themselves, like you said in the start, what vehicle, what operation am I trying to achieve with this? Do the pilot, get the feedback of saving. So what else is holding transporters back of doing and taking the first step?
Yeah, it's probably going to sound like a silly answer, but I think it's just awareness of which types of vehicles are available in the market, knowing that there are things like electric panel vans and electric trucks and things that they can trial, and knowing that there are suppliers like Zimi that can help them on this journey and can really help them solve the problems like infrastructure, energy access, the things that they need to actually make EVs possible. So I think just educating the market, helping them understand how the vehicles work, how the battery packs work is a big thing. And I think it speaks to the broader industry, right? It's not only logistics, it's also in the automotive industry, it's also in the insurance industry, it's also in the finance industry, because you have this big ecosystem that now has to make a shift to EVs, and not a lot of people understand how they work and if they're available and those types of things. So I think it's a big awareness campaign basically that we need to do.
Good. Well, it shows again an opportunity. Like we're in this crisp of something amazing to start, and I think well done for what you've done already. Do you mind sharing a practical example, maybe of a local fleet that you've taken through these steps and journey?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'll speak a bit about Bidvest International Logistics, who's one of our customers. We've been working with them for the past 18 months, really, in trialing a number of vehicles. So we've done, a panel van, a 2-tonner, and then now also a 4-ton vehicle, really to find exactly where the cost point makes a lot of sense for them. So again, looking at how they're costing to clients, which vehicle will actually perform the best, and running these trials up in Gauteng. We've seen amazing results. Again, getting the feedback from, for example, the drivers, that the quality of driving an EV is amazing. It's all automatic. The noise is a lot lower. And if you're thinking of a driver's experience, being in a truck for, 8, 9, whatever hours a day, that's a significant well-being improvement. The second thing that we've found is that the infrastructure is usually one of the easier problems to solve. It's usually more finding the right vehicle that will handle the use case. So having a vehicle that can do the right tonnage, for example, is really important. So if you have, depending on the type of volume of logistics you're doing, that's an important part of the calculation. And we've also realized that EVs don't work in every use case. So for example, line haul is still a tough one with EVs, right? You're not going to be doing maybe, Cape Town, Joburg with EVs anytime soon until guys like Zero Carbon Charge come and push infrastructure on those routes, and then it will make sense. But if you're doing anything from, let's say, 150 kilometers to 350, even 400 kilometers a day, perfect fit. And there's a lot of use cases for that, right? If you're thinking of companies we've been working with in recycling, if you think of companies that do, goods transport, anything like that, last mile, you're very rarely actually pushing beyond 250 k's a day because you have to think of shifts and you have to think of delivery times and things like that. So yeah, with Bidvest, it's very exciting because now we're exploring how we're scaling this up in the business. And I think that's going to be an exciting journey for them.
Typically, how long has that journey taken from first concept, trial, and to now deployment?
So I think with every customer, it's different, right? So some customers, they've kind of already done the analysis themselves. They've already started the exploration. They just want to start, get a couple of vehicles on the road and let's start running it. That could take anything, 3 months as a good example in a short case of time. If you're trialing with some of the customers that are taking a couple of months to test and trial, it can take anything from 6 months to a year. So again, if you're thinking of, especially if you're quite a large fleet, if you're quite a large corporation, work that into your timelines. Think of the 6 to 12 month timeline as a good timeline in which to plan, to test, to trial, and then to start scaling it up. Something that's also really important is you have to think of your defleet cycle. So you don't necessarily always want to just buy more vehicles unless you're growing as a company, which is also fantastic. But if you have vehicles that are coming either off of contract or going into the defleet or decommissioning time period, it's a perfect time to think of that as a good place to evaluate an EV. So if you've got a couple of 4-ton Hinos or Isuzus coming off of your fleet, start that journey 6 months, 12 months beforehand. Let's start trialing. Let's start seeing what we can do to replace those with electric.
And personally for you, the criteria of sifting through the EVs, have you taken a couple of rides in an EV? Have you had the opportunity to sleep over in one? I don't know.
I haven't slept over in one. I've been in the back of a panel van. I've been transported in one of our. We've got a couple of Zimi vehicles that we do site maintenance and servicing with. So it's only got 2 seats in the front, so sometimes I have to grab the back. But no, yeah, we're very lucky that we get access to a lot of the vehicle suppliers. So again, we work with a lot of the automotive distributors in South Africa, and we get access to all of their commercial vehicles for testing and trialing. That's how we build up our data set to understand if that vehicle really works well before we sell it to our customers. And then on the consumer side, yeah, we're also lucky to get everything from BMWs to Audis to BYDs, Volvos to test drive in. So yeah, I've probably test driven probably every electric vehicle in South Africa so far. I have some favorites, but we can chat about that afterwards.
Tell me of that growth in terms of the change and the technology sprint that the OEMs, the manufacturers are going through. How do you keep up with that?
Great question, and something that's really important for our strategy has always been about how do we integrate the vehicles without us still being agnostic, right? So again, we're coming from the customer perspective. We're evaluating the vehicles. We want to put the best case vehicle, or the best vehicle solution on the table for the customer, and we can only do that by being brand agnostic. So that's why we work with all the brands. So we really work with all the brands to understand which ones would be the best fit. What's really great though is that there's a significant push from the markets in China and Europe to push these vehicles out as a growth engine for them. I think for the South African market, a lot of the times they are a bit more, again, risk averse, because globally we're quite a small market, right? If you think of our vehicles in the vehicle market here. But luckily, a lot of them have been bringing in, doing the homologation, doing the regulatory checks to make sure the vehicles are on the roads. And then working with suppliers like us to actually test and trial these things with fleets is quite important for them. So in that regard, we work quite closely with them in terms of what new specs are coming out, what new vehicles are coming out. But it's amazing, man, just to see the speed at which batteries are developing. So just if I can quickly touch on the batteries, because that's kind of the biggest tech component that makes a difference in the vehicle, is that you have every 5 years, you have a doubling in energy density. That's just a fancy way of saying that every 5 years, the price of the battery gets cut in half. So every 5 years, and that's a third of the cost of the vehicle. So you're having, let's say, a 15% drop guarantee every 5 years, which is why things like the capex for vehicles upfront now in 5 years' time probably won't be there on most of the brands. So, and that's really where the technology is being driven by the OEMs, because the batteries are moving so quickly. And if you think of it historically, there hasn't been a lot of research effort put into making cheaper batteries. Electric vehicles and energy storage for solar has really pushed that up on the agenda. So that's a really exciting thing to see, and continuing to see how that develops going forward.
It's super insightful. It really does seem like transporters just need to start It's like a digitization journey. Wherever you are in your cycle, but just start. Because this is not going away. The cost saving is real. The limitations on practically getting started is, dimming down. Pretty soon, how long do you think it will take for the line operators to experience the same type of broad scale?
I think looking at the vehicles now, so let's look at the Sony trucks, right? So the Sony trucks, the 490s and the 650s, they're comfortably getting about 300 kilometer range, right, loaded. And that's what you're working on. So you're working on this 300 kilometer distance. So if you can figure out how to put charging stations every 300 kilometers, then you can do it. The question is really on companies like ourselves and also with customers. If there is a contract or there's an appetite for that, then we can make it happen. And we also have to rely on the public networks. Like the guys like Charge are doing an amazing job. I think they've got about 150 sites planned in South Africa. They're doing their second and third sites now. So I'd say give it about a couple of years for the line haul to pick up. But I think on things like last mile, mid mile, customer ops, all of that can happen now. That we don't have to wait for.
The spread of information around the topic, what would you advise transporters? Where do they keep abreast of this? Being in contact with you, or is there an industry body that shares information rapidly? How do I know? How do I keep up to date with what's going in the space?
Oh, it's going to sound like a silly answer, but probably LinkedIn. LinkedIn, if you follow the right people, follow people like Gary Scott, people like Greg Gress, follow me as well, follow you. There's lots of people publishing articles, publishing legitimate news on electric vehicles. I think also, places like the Transport Forum is fantastic, also to learn more and to educate yourself on doing some EV initiatives. And then, come talk to us. We're always available to start that journey. So it's, come have a chat with me.
Your presence itself, everywhere in the country, a lot of the engagement starting, is that in person or, get involved, get in touch, contact online, and then get the process going?
Exactly. So we operate across South Africa. We install charging stations where they need them. So it can be in the middle of nowhere, or it can be in an urban center. Our network is across South Africa. And then getting in touch with me, just reach out, and we set up a session. I love meeting in person, so I'll probably fly out to come say hi. Okay,
Michael. So we get to the part, as customary for all our guests. Take a shot into the future. Freight forecast. What do you predict 3 to 5 years in how this space and in the transport sector will change?
I'm going to be bold and say a third of your fleet is going to be electric, guaranteed.
That is bold. Yeah. Wonderful. And contrary to that, freight foe, some misconceptions, something that transporters are really not getting right.
I think looking again at the capex or the price of the vehicle instead of looking at the total cost of ownership. The savings is really driven by the energy savings, by the fuel savings. That's what makes EVs work.
Well said. We have a round of rapid fire questions. So these only require short sentence or one word response, if you don't mind.
Okay, great.
So the first one is any buzzwords that you really dislike in the industry?
There are many, but I really dislike the word ICE, which stands for internal combustion engine. It's very much an industry jargon term, but it's actually just petrol and diesel vehicles. So whenever somebody says ICE, I say, nobody knows what that is. Just say petrol and diesel vehicle.
Do you drive a diesel or electric?
I drive a diesel, but it's because I haven't been in the market for a new vehicle. My next vehicle will definitely be electric.
I know who you can call.
Yeah, don't worry. I've got supply.
Any favorite specific EV manufacturer?
No, I love them all equally.
Good. A region that you like to travel the most in South Africa?
The Western Cape. I love the Western Cape. Yeah, I live here, love traveling here. I love the whole of South Africa, but definitely the Western Cape.
Michael, I've really enjoyed this. It's truly insightful, and it makes me think of the statement I've heard a lot, and that is the rate of digitization is directly linked to the rate of trust, which is sometimes underpinned by the availability of knowledge and the empowerment of that. And I think truly that is where transporters find themselves. And the fact that Zimi really takes transporters from the start all the way through yeah, that's exactly what is needed.
Yeah, I definitely think when you're starting your journey with EVs, I mean, working with somebody that really understands fleet, understands how logistics operate is really critical. And that's something that we pride ourselves in. We're going to give you the best customer experience because we know how to work with fleet companies. And that's the only segment we work in. So yeah, it's exciting.
In closing, any advice you would give aspiring transporters that are going to take this journey, crossing the line of going into EV? Anything you would like to shout out to?
I think, always think of it as a holistic solution. Think of it as you've got the vehicle, you've got the charges, you've got the energy, and you have to figure out how that will work optimally in your operation. But just start the journey. Just start with a conversation. Reach out to us. Let's have a conversation around which vehicles are available. But start that journey now, because again, it can take a while. And also bear with the market. I mean, the market is still quite young. There's lots of new vehicles coming out into the market. And again, nothing stops you from trialing and testing these things early on. So just reach out and get the journey started.
Thank you, Michael. And that brings an end to another CtrlCast. This has been an exciting edition on a very relevant topic, a topic that's not going to go away, and that is the EV and transition to electronic vehicles. Stay tuned for our next edition of CtrlCast, where we're going to be talking to a transport operator and practically getting first-hand insight on how they navigate all these decisions and how to go into digitization and away from traditional only brick and mortar diesel and dust. Thank you.